The Bennett Star was minutes from leaving Miami Harbor when Marcus Reed, a poor black carpenter with a toolbox in his hand, spotted a dark red stain sinking between the teak floorboards outside Audrey Bennett's father's old cabin. Across the deck, Senator Richard Vail smiled for donors, but kept both hands buried in his pockets. Marcus blocked the gangway and said, "This yacht does not move." Everyone laughed, until he lifted a loose plank and found a broken watch, a sealed metal box, and a note that read, "Trust the man who knows the bones of this boat." No one paid attention to the carpenter until he stopped a $40 million yacht from leaving Miami Harbor. The Bennett Star glowed under sunset lights, all polished brass, white leather, and champagne glasses, while donors climbed aboard for Senator Richard Vail's private fundraiser. Audrey Bennett stood near the rail in a navy dress, smiling for cameras she wished would disappear. This yacht had belonged to her late father, and every inch of it still felt like his voice. Below the main deck, Marcus Reed packed his tools beside freshly polished teak, ready to leave unnoticed. Then he saw it, a dark red stain tucked between two floorboards outside the old captain's cabin. Across the deck, Senator Vail quietly slipped both hands into his pockets. Marcus crouched lower, blocking the stain with his shadow before any passing guest could step on it. The teak had been sanded that morning, but this section looked too glossy, too fresh, like someone had rushed a coat of varnish over a secret. He touched the edge with a clean rag, and the red mark did not smear like wine. It had settled deep into the grain. His stomach tightened. Marcus had spent half his life reading wood, learning how cracks, waterlines, and careless repairs told the truth people tried to hide. Then a calm voice spoke behind him. "Is there a problem?" Senator Vail stood 3 feet away, smiling politely, both hands still buried in his suit pockets. Marcus stood slowly, keeping the rag folded in his palm. "This floor needs to be checked before the yacht leaves," he said. Senator Vail's smile thinned. "Son, rich people spill things on boats. Do your job and go home." The word son landed sharp, but Marcus did not blink. That was not wine. A nearby event manager froze with a tray of champagne. A few guests turned their heads. Senator Vail stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are temporary help. Do not embarrass Miss Bennett." Marcus looked past him toward Audrey, who had just noticed the tension from the upper deck. "Then let her decide," Marcus said. "Because her father sealed this floor himself." Audrey came down the steps with Senator Vail at her shoulder, his voice already softening into concern. "Miss Bennett, this man is confusing a maintenance issue with drama. Your donors are waiting." Marcus held his ground, toolbox beside his boot. Around them, expensive watches flashed, glasses paused, and whispers spread across the deck. Audrey looked at the floor, then at Marcus. "You worked on this yacht before?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Your father hired me when I was 21. He taught me this teak has a memory." Senator Vail gave a quiet laugh. "A touching story." But Marcus pointed to the glossy patch. "That patch was covered tonight. Not this morning. Someone wanted the yacht gone before you saw it." The captain's voice came over the speaker, calm and professional. "All guests aboard. We depart in 2 minutes." Senator Vail smiled as if the matter had ended. "There. The harbor schedule is strict." Marcus picked up his toolbox, walked to the gangway, and set it down across the path. The movement was simple, but the entire deck went quiet. A donor muttered, "Is he serious?" Marcus kept his eyes on Audrey. "This yacht does not move until you see what is under that floor." Senator Vail's face tightened. "Remove him." Audrey looked at the glossy teak, then at the man everyone wanted dismissed. Her voice was low, but clear. "No. Open my father's cabin." The cabin door opened with a soft click, and the noise from the party seemed to fall away behind them. Inside, everything still carried Audrey's father's presence. Folded seam maps, a brass compass, an old navy jacket, and a mahogany desk Marcus remembered sanding by hand years ago. Audrey stepped in slowly, her confidence fading into something more fragile. Marcus knelt beside the glossy section of floor and tapped the teak twice. The sound came back hollow. Senator Vail stood in the doorway, his smile fixed too tightly. "This is unnecessary," he said. Marcus reached into his toolbox, removed a small pry bar, and looked at Audrey. She nodded once. Beneath the plank, a metal corner glinted in the dark. Marcus lifted the loosened plank with careful hands, and every person near the cabin leaned forward without meaning to. Beneath the floor sat a small metal box, its lock bent open, with a broken silver watch lying beside it. Audrey's breath caught. "My father kept that box here," she whispered. "He called it insurance against men," with perfect smiles. Marcus picked up the watch by its cracked band and turned it toward the cabin light. Senator Vale's jaw tightened. For the first time all night, his hands left his pockets just enough for Audrey to see the bandage wrapped around one finger. Marcus looked at her, then at the watch. "Miss Bennett," he said quietly, "someone came back for what your father hid." Senator Vale stepped into the cabin as if he still owned the air inside it. "This is exactly what desperation looks like," he said, turning to the guests gathering behind Audrey. "A temporary carpenter plants a box, waves around an old watch, and hopes a grieving daughter will pay him to disappear." Marcus went still, the words cutting deeper than the polished smile. Audrey looked at him, waiting, and for one terrible second the whole yacht seemed to lean toward doubt. Marcus did not raise his voice. He only held up the watch and said, "Ask him why he knew I worked for your father." Audrey slowly turned. Senator Vale's face lost its color beneath the cabin light. Marcus kept his eyes on Audrey, not the senator. "Your father hired me when I was barely 21, he said. "I was broke, angry, and sleeping in my truck behind the marina. He gave me work, then taught me why a good craftsman never covers damage without understanding how it got there." Audrey's expression softened, but Senator Vale looked toward the deck as if searching for an exit. Marcus continued, "After your father passed, my contract vanished. Every shipyard in Miami suddenly stopped returning my calls." He pointed to the open floor. "Because I saw Senator Vale come aboard one night that was not on the log." Audrey turned to the senator, her voice trembling. "You knew my father hid something." Senator Vale opened his mouth, but Audrey had already reached into the metal box. Inside was a waterproof hard drive wrapped in waxed cloth and an envelope with her name written in her father's careful hand. She unfolded the letter with shaking fingers. "Audrey, if you are reading this, trust the person who knows the bones of this boat." Marcus looked down at the exposed frame beneath the floorboards. "He meant the structure," he said softly. "The keel, the ribs, the hidden compartments. Things only a builder would understand." Audrey pressed the letter to her chest, and the doubt finally left her eyes. She turned to Marcus, no longer seeing hired help. She saw the last person her father had trusted. Audrey folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and looked toward the crowded deck where the music was still playing like nothing had changed. Senator Vale straightened his jacket, trying to recover his smile. "Audrey, be careful. Public confusion can damage your foundation." She looked at Marcus, then at the open floor beneath her father's desk. "So can silence," she said. Minutes later, every donor was gathered under the warm deck lights, Miami Harbor glittering behind them. Senator Vale stood near the microphone, certain she had chosen control over truth. Audrey stepped forward instead. "My father built this yacht to carry honest work, not political secrets." Then she turned and said, "Marcus, stand beside me." Marcus stood beside Audrey beneath the deck lights, his work boots still dusty against the polished floor. He did not shout. He simply placed each truth where everyone could see it: the fresh varnish, the stained teak, the broken watch, the altered maintenance log, the waterproof hard drive, and her father's letter. One by one, the donors stopped whispering. Senator Vale reached for his practiced smile, but Audrey raised her hand. "Please take your hands out of your pockets." The harbor breeze moved across the silent deck. Slowly he did. A clean bandage wrapped one finger, exactly where the floor stain and broken box suggested it would be. Marcus looked at the guests who had laughed at him and said, "Wood remembers what power tries to hide." By sunrise, Senator Vale had left the yacht under formal investigation, and the Bennett Star no longer felt like a stage for powerful men with polished smiles. Weeks later, Audrey reopened it as a training workshop for young carpenters, boat restorers, and workers who needed the same second chance her father once gave Marcus. The first brass sign went up beside the cabin door, Marcus Reed Maritime Workshop. Marcus stared at his name until his eyes shone, his worn hands resting on the rail he had restored himself. Audrey stood beside him, the harbor bright behind her. "My father trusted the right man," she said. Marcus looked over the teak deck and answered softly, "Then I will make sure this boat teaches the right lessons."